First of all, welcome to all of you for coming out, taking your time today to celebrate the retirement of Judge James L. Roberts, Jr. I'm sure you're going to hear a great number of people refer to him as Jimmy, so if I do the same, just forgive me. We had planned this some time ago, and the folks that were really seriously involved with the planning called me about a week ago and said he would like for you to be the MC, and I said I certainly would like to sit out in the audience and enjoy this today as opposed to actually trying to MC it, because I knew we would have a large group of folks here today, not to mention quite an assemblage of judges and officials from not only locally, but perhaps even around the state. I know we have a number here. I had been given a list of the judges that have signed in and said they're here, and I'm sure that not only will I miss some, but I can't read the writing of some of them. John Mitchell, some of them should have been doctors because I can't read half the ones that signed in today. As I said, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a pretty good number of folks on the program today, and we're going to try to get through it because I know most of you have come here today to say or see or say hello to Jim Roberts, and I want all of you to have that opportunity when we get through with the program, so hopefully we will zip through it. Melinda told me to tell all the judges that were on the program to hurry up and get through, and I told her I would defer to her and let her tell all of them that. So sometime in December of 1976, after I had spent 3 years in the Air Force as a judge advocate, I came back here, was in the process of trying to open an office, and I got a telephone call from Jim Roberts. And he said, "Are you getting your office set up?" And I said, "Well, it's been a chore, but I'm about through, and hopefully we'll be able to open up here in a few days." And he said, "Well, I had coffee this morning with Jim Hubbard and Fulton Tutor, and they told me they could never get up with me and that I needed to talk to you about the possibility we might go together and form a partnership." And so over the next couple of months, we talked several times, and sometime along March or so, I moved my furniture across the way here at the east door of the courthouse, where I then remained for 38 years until, in fact, we sold the building over there. Had an enjoyable experience with my time that I practiced law with Jimmy. He was gone more than he was there, but he was there off and on for most of those years, and we certainly had a very good, warm, pleasant time during the time we practiced law together. Since I got chosen to be the MC, I'm going to tell one quick funny story. I thought of several, but this one was the only one I felt comfortable telling in front of a large crowd today. So those of you may remember, in the early years, we had a couple of rental offices in our building over there. The Tennessee River Pup and Paper had an office there, and there was an area manager that worked for them named Beryl Toller. Some of the folks around town will remember him. He was quite a practical joker. He loved to play practical jokes. He just didn't like them played on him. And he committed several on us while he was there. One time toward Christmas, he came to me and said, "Tutor, I want to buy a gag gift for Jimmy Roberts. Give me $10. And I said, "Okay." He then, unbeknownst to me, went to Jimmy Roberts and said, "Roberts, I want to play a joke on Phil Tutor. Give me $10. He gave him $10. At Christmas, we were presented with the plaque that all of you can look at over here with the pictures. It says, and it's unfortunately a replica of the rear ends of two horses. It says to Roberts and Tutor, "In tribute to what you have made of yourselves." Those of you who see it, I wanted you to hear the story. First thing we're going to do today, Brother Brad Hodges, who is the pastor of the First United Methodist Church here in Pontotoc, the home church of Judge Roberts, is going to sing the national anthem and afterwards lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And after that, Brother Doug Jones will say our invocation. I would ask that you stand for all of that.
Oh, say, can you sing by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's lights last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars will the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we once were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say toss that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Would you join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Phillip. I've been sworn into secrecy. It's not often when a Baptist preacher has to do that. But I have traveled with Jimmy and Jim Hubbard. And so if I don't want to get shot, I better keep my mouth shut. And I told Jimmy, I said, Jimmy, you don't tell anything you know about me. And my year's coming up, and I'll pray in a minute, but my year's coming up, I've been called a lawyer and a Baptist preacher. I tell you, I hadn't seen too much difference. I love Jimmy. I've been in Pontotoc County 55 years. I met his daddy before I met him. Jimmy was the first politician I ever voted for because I was too cheap to pay poll taxes. No, I thought it was highway robbery and I didn't do it. But anyway, I voted for Jimmy the first time because of his daddy. There wasn't a finer man in Pontotoc County than Lamar, and I loved him. And I think the world of him. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a chip off the old block. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you again for Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for loving us and saving us. Thank you, Lord, for calling us out of darkness into your marvelous light. Thank you, Lord, for this time that we have this Friday afternoon to celebrate the successes of our friend, Judge Jimmy Roberts. And Father, we marvel at the opportunities that you've given him and the successes that he's had in every one of them. Lord, I pray that these later years in his life, that be just as fruitful and just as happy as the time that he was working night and day. Father, bless Rose. She's been a great helpmeet. And I thank you for her. Someone said behind every great man there's a great woman. And those of us that are married or have been married, we know that to be the truth. So I celebrate my friend, Judge Roberts, and I wish the best for him throughout his life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Be seated. This is the most difficult part of this program, and that is trying to recognize who all is here. And I am certain that I won't get most of them. First of all, I want to recognize Jim Roberts' family. Rose, his wife, there to his right, as you see, looking toward him, is present with us today. Her daughter Kim and his granddaughter, and over to this side, sister Joanne Bradley with her husband Jerry, their son-in-law Keith Cantack, and several other cousins that are out front sitting here today. There may be others, I don't know, and again, I'm apologizing in advance if I miss anybody. From the legislature, I see Mac Huddleston, former Representative Steve Holland is here, over here. Anybody else here from the Mississippi legislature or somebody who has recently been there? Nikki Browning, sorry I missed you when you came in. We have quite a number of judges. I'm going to attempt to try to read their writing of some that are here. There are a pretty good number that are not here that I know that slipped in. From the Supreme Court, Josiah Coleman is in the box. How about standing up so they can see their Supreme Court justice from the Northern District? Thank you. Thank you for coming today. And a number of circuit and chancery judges are here. I'm not going to tell you who they all are. I'm just going to try to get their names. Percy Lynchard, Bobby Elliott, John Hatcher, Norman Gillespie, David Houston, Barry Ford, Smith Murphey, Paul Funderburk, John Gregory, Jim Greenlee, Robert Whitwell, James Maxwell, Rusty White, John R. White, back over here. Already talked about Judge Coleman. And I'm not going to least but forget too, Fred Wicker sitting to my right, who now is known around the state as Senator Roger Wicker's father, but by all the locals still is Judge Wicker, Roger Wicker's dad. So he's here today and on the program, I might add. I've had a number of inquiries about that, by the way, him being on the program. Andy Howarth. I know I didn't get all of them. Who else is in the judiciary is here? Stacy came in, Stacy Belville, Jim Pound, Kelly Luther. Let's see it. You know, you may be one of those I couldn't read, by the way. Brad Tennyson came in, he's in the back. I'm sure I missed some others, but if I did, I'm sorry. We're delighted to have that many folks who chose to came over here today and to participate with us today. I couldn't proceed too long without Angela Stewart, the Circuit Court Administrator, back to my right, and Melinda Norwicki, who is the Circuit Clerk, who have helped this week put everything together, and recognizing the Pontotoc County Chamber of Commerce. Where is Ellen? Okay. Ellen Russell in the back. Her and the Chamber have worked hard on putting things together, and it couldn't have been done without her. There are a lot of other people that she has got here working today that have helped as well. This started out as a real simple process and developed into a fairly complicated one over a period of time. All right, we have a number of guests here that are in the judiciary that are going to make remarks. I'm not going to introduce them as they get up. I've told them as soon as we start, I'm going to let the first one come, and when he's through, the next one can come. We have the Honorable Paul Funderburk, the Senior Circuit Judge for the First Circuit Court District here in our area. Back over here, the Honorable Glen Davidson, the Senior Status District Judge for the United States District Court, Northern District, and by the way, a fine native of Ecru, Mississippi. The Honorable Mike Malski, back to my left, a Chancery Judge with the First District. Gary Carnathan, by the way, is not a judge, and he and I have discussed it. I don't know exactly why he or I are here today, except to say something to Jimmy. The Honorable Smith Murphey is a circuit judge over in the Batesville area for the 17th Circuit Court District, and I believe was a law clerk for Judge Roberts when he was down at the Mississippi Supreme Court. Happy to have you with us today. And last, the Honorable Thomas Fred Wicker, retired circuit judge also for the First District. I'm going to let Judge Funderburk go first, and then after he's through, the rest of them have seen the program. They're in order. They know what to do.
Thank you, Phil. This is not the first thing I've been to where Phil has been the master of ceremonies. And he has a habit, I've noticed, of saving the best for last. So that's why I'm going first. I want to welcome all of you here, and I thank Judge Roberts for allowing me to speak today. And looking around at the other speakers on the program, I think I'm in pretty high cotton, Jimmy. There have been no shortage of speakers from the Mississippi Gulf Coast to the Tennessee state line to be here to speak today. And I realize that. And I want to say to you, while there are a great number of your friends here today and colleagues, there are untold numbers who are not here physically but are in spirit are here. From the onset of your illness, every place I've been, it's daily and numerous people, almost daily, asking about you, sending their regards and their best wishes for your improvement in your health and your return to the bench. It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the court administrator, Ms. Stewart, and Phil, and the Chamber of Commerce in Pontotoc County Bar for their participation in setting up this program. Despite of all of Judge Roberts' many achievements and accomplishments, he is a very unassuming and modest person. After discussing this with the court administrator about having a reception or retirement ceremony for Jimmy, she either by telephone or visit came over and spoke with Jimmy about that, and he said he was not sure that he wanted such a ceremony or reception. At which time Ms. Stewart says, well, you're having one whether you like it or not. So much for that, and here we are here today. It's my honor to be here today with Judge Roberts and Ms. Rose on this special occasion, honoring my friend and colleague, the Honorable James L. Roberts, Jr., Circuit Court Judge of the First Judicial District of the state of Mississippi, on his retirement. Jimmy has a long record of public service. After being educated at Millsaps College, obtaining an MBA from Mississippi State, and graduating from the University of Mississippi Law School, Jimmy has been in politics and public service in various capacities ever since. He was the Pontotoc County Prosecuting Attorney, 1976 to 1984. He was on the Northeast Mississippi Mental Retardation Commission from 1972 to 1988. He was chair of that commission at one time for a number of years. 1984 to 1988, he served as the Mississippi Commissioner of Public Safety. 1984 to 1988, he served on the Mississippi Board of Law Enforcement Officer Standards and Training Commission. He served as a Chancery Court Judge for the First Chancery District from 1988 to 1992. He served as a Justice on the Mississippi Supreme Court from 1992 until 1999. From 2000 to 2006, Judge Roberts served as a Professor of Criminal Justice at the University of Southern Mississippi. 2006 and 2007, he served as the Municipal Judge for the City of Pontotoc. 2008 2006 to 2008, Jimmy served as a member of the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee, which he chaired 2006 and 2007. He has served as a circuit judge for the 1st Judicial District from 2007 until the present. He has been a member of the Commission on the Future of Northeast Mississippi for 2009 through 2018. He has been an alternate member of the Mississippi Judicial Performance Commission during 2010 to 2016. He has been a full member of the Commission since 2016 until his resignation June or July of last year. I'm going to have to pick up my notes. The lighting in here is not the best. In addition, Jimmy has been on the Board of Governors of the Mississippi Judicial College and the Mississippi Bar Foundation. He received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Mississippi Bar in 2012 and was the 2014 recipient of the Distinguished Jurist Award at Mississippi State University. I've researched this because of Jimmy's modesty. He does not go around talking and bragging about his many accomplishments. That's one of his traits, and unlike some. In addition to all of his other accomplishments, Jimmy was an outstanding lawyer, as I learned shortly after graduating from law school in December 1976 and being sworn in as a member of the bar in January of 1977. A few months after being sworn in, I found myself over here in this courthouse by myself, representing a defendant who was accused of stealing a tray of a dozen diamond rings from the Mr. Roy's jewelry store. I believe it was Shannon's jewelry store. In any event, Jimmy was the Lee County prosecuting attorney on that case. And if I'm not mistaken, Judge Gardner was the assistant district attorney that was here in that trial. Well, unbeknownst to me, Jimmy, along with his buddy, Sheriff Jim Hubbard, picked the jury on me. I thought I did an excellent job of evaluating the jury and exercising my challenges and so forth, but obviously from the result, I was mistaken. Judge Neil Biggers, now Federal Judge Biggers, was the judge on that case. We tried the case in early 1977, and there was a conviction. Judge Biggers sentenced my client at the time to the maximum sentence allowed by law, I think at the time was 5 years. And, but anyway, my client had enough money to pay in a fee to appeal and pay the court cost. Went down to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in their infinite wisdom, decided I was right. Not only did they reverse the case, they discharged my client and said, there is no evidence that Walker took the rings. They didn't say insufficient evidence, they said no evidence. That's what I argued to the jury and Judge Biggers to no avail. But since Jimmy we've been working together now for several years, On occasion, I remind him of this case and the ultimate outcome. And he used to take it pretty good. But sometime last year, summer, early fall, we were sitting in the court administrator's office doing nothing. And I decided it'd be a good time to bring it up. So I did. I said, Jimmy, do you remember that case I tried? I was just out of law school. You were the county prosecutor. Judge Gardner was assistant DA. And I went through about what happened, what the Supreme Court said and did. He wasn't so nice that day. He said, hell yeah, Paul, I remember it. You won't let me forget it. You keep bringing it up. But anyway, Jimmy, for your reading leisure in your retirement, it's a short case, only 3 pages. I brought... Obviously, the Supreme Court didn't have much to write about, but for your pleasure and reading, I brought you a copy in case you've forgotten any of the details, which I'll give to you after this ceremony. Jimmy was elected to the Mississippi Supreme Court in 1992 and served from September 28, 1992 until his resignation on March 1, 1999. His departure from the Supreme Court later became our court's gain when he was appointed on December 19, 2007 to fill the vacancy created by Judge Aycock's ascension to the federal bench. Judge Roberts has been elected 3 times since without opposition, which says, I think, a lot for him. I haven't been that lucky, which may say a lot about me, I'm not sure. Jimmy, it's been my honor and privilege to serve with you since 2007. You hear people speak of a man's man, a Marine's Marine. Well, Jimmy is a judge's judge, if there's ever been one. He came to our court with a lot of legal experience. He was a good lawyer, as I just demonstrated, when he could convict somebody, as the Supreme Court said, with no evidence. That's pretty good lawyering. He came to our court with a lot of legal experience, judicial experience. He has served our court with dignity, dedication, and distinction, and it's been my honor and privilege to work with him, and I've been dreading this day for a long time. Jimmy and I are friends. He's been there with all of his knowledge and wisdom for me to pick his brain, and he's not only going to be missed by me, but Jimmy, you're going to be missed by the staff and all the people throughout this district, in the clerk's offices, the bailiffs, the court personnel, law enforcement. And like I say, there are many who are not here today physically, but they're in here in spirit. In every courthouse I go to, the first thing when I get out of my automobile and the bailiff comes out to greet me, people, the bailiff, and on through into the courthouse, into the courtroom, and in chambers, is constant, how's Judge Roberts? We wish him the best. When will he be back? Everyone, there is no one I know who does not regret your retirement. And this is something I've said and told others every opportunity I've had to speak. Even though Judge Roberts has been very successful in political life, as successful as anyone I know, I don't see Jimmy as being a politician. I don't think of you as a politician. Jimmy is a true public servant and not just another politician, no matter the office which he is holding or has held in the past. And you don't have to be, in my opinion, just another politician to succeed in politics. Jimmy has proven that. But he's not a politician. And I would take offense to anyone who said Jimmy Roberts was a politician. He's not. He's a true, dedicated public servant. Yesterday, in a telephone conversation with Jimmy about today's ceremony, he made a comment to me that upset me some. I thought about it all afternoon, last night, and this morning. Jimmy said that today would be the funeral for his career. And my friend, I most respectfully disagree with that. Today is not a funeral for Jimmy's career. It's a celebration and a day of appreciation for his many, many years of dedicated public service. That's been Jimmy's life. Today is a celebration and appreciation of your career and of all your many accomplishments and achievements and contributions, not only as a judge, but during your entire life of public service to the people of Mississippi. You may be retiring today, Jimmy, but the legacy of your career is just beginning. I have a plaque that your colleagues and the staff in the office got for you. Gavel and a little inscription here. It's rosewood. If you don't like rosewood, you talk to Miss Stewart about that. I think it's a beautiful plaque, and it reads, "Presented to James L. Roberts, Jr., Circuit Court Judge, in appreciation of your many dedicated years of public service to the people of the state of Mississippi." We talked about the circuit court and decided that was not adequate and changed it to the people of the state of Mississippi. Jimmy, I've enjoyed every minute of our time together as judges. consider you a friend. The governor may appoint someone to take your slot, but he can never appoint someone to replace such a great man as you are. And everyone here knows that. And we all wish you and Miss Rose, Jimmy, the best in your retirement. And I hope it happens, that you get to the point of recovery to where you feel that you can handle some court business. I've talked with the Chief Justice, and all you got to do is let me know, and I will contact him and he will appoint you. And I hope that day comes, because it would be a shame not to use the resources of yourself. So I don't know what else to say, Jimmy. I'm going to miss you a lot.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, to be for the United States District Court, the federal court, to be recognized on this occasion. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to speak in this courtroom. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to speak in this magnificently restored circuit courtroom. This building, when it was constructed in 1916, Theodore G. Bilbo, the governor at that time, categorized this building as the most magnificent public building in the state of Mississippi. And it's a treasure. And I commend the Board of Supervisors, the citizens of Pontotoc County, for what you've done with this courtroom. It's a lot different than it was the last time. Now, as to the inscription here, "To thine own self be true," I've never seen that in another courtroom anywhere else in the United States of America. I think it's appropriate. If there is such a place for that to be appropriate, it's in a courtroom. Now, the genesis, the origination of that inscription came from a man named Samuel J. Long, who was a circuit judge in this district from 1914 to 1926. He was the father of Sam H. Long, that many of us know and remember. General Long was a partner of Adams, Long and Adams, a law firm in Tupelo. That was Chancellor Adams was a junior member of that firm. But this inscription was painted at the direction of General Sam Long's father. Now, Sam Long was the only man I ever knew that I was ever personally associated with who was a veteran of both World War I and World War II. He was a colonel in the Mississippi National Guard, and when he retired was promoted to Brigadier General. And many of us remember him. I think he died in like 1975 at age 90. Now, to the business at hand with Judge Roberts, we go back a long time. I can remember I started the first grade with his sister Joanne. That was just a few years ago. Jimmy and I have known each other all of our lives, really. And now, Judge Funderburk was off a little bit on these dates. You graduated from law school in 1971, was sworn in as county prosecuting attorney in 1972. I had been assistant district attorney for 2 years, and Jimmy and I worked here in the prosecution of criminal cases in Pontotoc County, worked together until I was appointed district attorney and then resigned. And the whole time I was assistant district attorney, I was the only one and I was part-time. Gary Carnathan and I had an active civil practice. The whole time I was an assistant district attorney. I checked the roster a day before yesterday, and today you have 10 full-time district attorneys, assistant district attorneys. Now, Jimmy, we were working pretty hard, but I didn't know we were doing the work of 10 attorneys. I tell you that the difference is we were prosecutors BD before drugs. We had never heard of crystal methamphetamine, had never heard of crack cocaine, and that's a huge difference. Sheriff Malski, if you could imagine no drugs. But today, that in all over the United States, in every county, every federal court, every district court, circuit court, it's true that drugs are just a rampant, terrible problem in this country. And but Jimmy and I had a good time prosecuting here in Pontotoc County. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the third member of that team was the Sheriff Jim Hubbard. Jim had a steel lock mind and memory, and it was a pleasure to work with him. He was a sheriff the whole time I worked over here. At another juncture in our career, paths crossed when I was United States Attorney in the 1980s, and Jimmy was appointed Commissioner of Public Safety in the state of Mississippi. We did some joint work together. We had an organization called Law Enforcement Coordinating Committee, and I recall several cases that the FBI and the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation worked jointly. And of course, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation fell under Jimmy's supervision. But we had good experiences and good luck in that regard. Now, in all of Judge Roberts' positions that he's held in the judiciary as a judge, as a prosecutor, as a commissioner of public safety, he's demonstrated what I refer to as all of these superlative adjectives. He was intelligent, he was honest, he was dedicated to his work, he enjoyed what he was doing, he enjoyed the hard work. But I think first and foremost, Jimmy is a people person. He loves the state of Mississippi and he loves Pontotoc County. And there's no question that he enjoys being with people. Now, insofar as his retirement, health is just something that in many instances we have to play the hand we're dealt. And I'll have to say that Judge Roberts and Rose have not been dealt a good hand. But I wish for them improvement in the future. I hope they'll get better. I would love to see Judge Roberts come back on the bench in some capacity. But the bottom line is Jimmy is a good man, and I have enjoyed being his friend and working with him through the years, in which he and Rose the best.
Hello. It comes as sort of a surprise to a lot of people that there are actually a few lawyers and a few judges who don't like to do a lot of talking. Most lawyers and most judges like to do a lot of talking. Several people have told me they were fairly certain that my remarks would probably be the shortest of anybody who spoke today, and that's probably true. When Judge Davidson was talking, I have to admit this, it reminded me of a story, and then I'm going to get to what I was planning to say, which will be fairly short. You know, Jimmy was fairly imaginative, trying lawsuits, and after Judge Davidson's assistant district attorney in 1975, I was an assistant district attorney, had my full-time practice with one Gary Lee Carnathan. And Jimmy and I tried a lot of cases in this courthouse. Back then the bench was on that side of the building, and a fella down in your fair city or town of Troy was robbed. Some people came down from Chicago and there was an armed robbery, and the fellow that was robbed couldn't see. And I said, well, the jury needs to know that he can't see. But I really don't want to be so obvious as to ask him and embarrass him. Can you see or not? Jimmy and Jim Hubbard said, don't you worry about it for 1 minute. We'll handle it. So during the noon hour before the fella took the stand to testify, the victim, Jim Hubbard and Jimmy strategically placed a trash can on the pathway to the witness box. Well, the poor fellow who was being led in, guess what? He ran into the trash can. Everybody knew he couldn't see. Now, with that having been said, I've always sort of envied Jimmy's ability and Judge Wicker's ability and even my former law partner's ability to captivate people and to be able to talk to crowds and keep them entertained. I've never had that particular gift. Jimmy has always had that ability. He spoke when I was sworn into the bench, or he was the master of ceremonies. But there's another reason that I'm not going to say a great deal. I can't say as much as your presence here says. Your presence to come out for this day says a lot more than I can say. Jimmy graduated in 1971 from law school. I graduated, this is kind of hard to believe, a half of a century ago. Next month, I graduated in 1970, which was 50 years ago. Jimmy, you get your pen next year. I get mine in a few weeks. Now, much of that time, I have known Jimmy professionally, as a professional colleague, and more importantly, as my friend. During that time, Jimmy has held many roles. I'm not going to sit here and list all of them. Everybody here knows most of them. Judge Funderburk eloquently stated what those roles were. But Jimmy has held essentially every judicial office in this state. He reminds me of another person that is one of his heroes that hadn't been mentioned. A person from Pontotoc County, one William Enzer. William Enzer and Jimmy have a lot in common. Regardless of the role that Jimmy has held, he's always fulfilled that role with empathy and with humor. When there have been setbacks, he hasn't reacted in any way at any time with bitterness or with any kind of incrimination. When he's had successes, he's never shown excessive pride or arrogance. What he has done, he has moved on and took it all in stride. There is a verse in Ecclesiastes. That verse, I think everybody here has heard it at some time or the other. And that verse is, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven." Well, for Jimmy and for me and for us old lawyers, sometimes we don't want to count all that number of seasons, but they've all been wonderful. Every one of them. So, with that having been said, Jimmy will have more seasons. And this kind of echoes what Judge Funderburk said. We need to continue to make Jimmy part of those seasons. Thank you.
Well, now, if you're going to get to talk about Jimmy Robert, I'll say a few words about him. You know, Jimmy is an extraordinary storyteller. I don't know what it is in the water over here. Judge Wicker and Jimmy could tell many tales, and all of us have over the years listened to his tales and had a great sense of humor about them. I want to tell just a short tale about when he first hit the bench on the Chancery Court, and the first term of court was over in Tupelo, Lee County. And I just happened to have a contested divorce that we were going to have to try. My counsel opposite was the Right Honorable Jimmy Doug Shelton, and Jimmy Doug represented the woman and I represented the man. Now, all you young lawyers don't remember anything like this, but we had terms of court. And you had to go to something called a docket call to get your case set for trial. If you didn't go to docket call and you didn't get your case set, it just went on by. So Jimmy Doug and I appeared on the second Monday of January of that year to set our case. It was a week term. First day was docket call. Second day was uncontested divorces. Wednesday and Thursday were 2 days. Only 2 days you could try your cases during that term. Jimmy Doug and I got our case set first up, right off the bat, 10 o'clock, Wednesday morning. When we got through the docket call, Jimmy mentioned to us, said, Mr. Shelton, you and Mr. Carnathan come back in chambers a minute. So we said, okay, we're going to go back in chambers. And of course, now Jimmy was always good about bragging on the lawyers, which we really appreciated a lot of times when you was out there in the court, and he bragged on us and told us what a good job we did. And, then we could say to our clients, now look here, I know you think I'm dumb, but look at what that judge said about me. And Jimmy would always help us with that. So we go back in chambers, and he says, now boys, let me just tell you something. You know, I've hit this Chancery bench, and I know how, important job it is. I hope I can help you boys out in this trial, and I hope that I do well by the facts and the evidence and give y'all a good shot at this case. Jimmy Doug and I said, Your Honor, we know you're going to do a good job. There's no problem with that. This is going to be an easy case. He said it was the first one that he had tried, and we told him, it's going to be an easy case, Judge. Don't have any children. Just going to have a divorce, you're just going to have division of property, and it's going to kind of be an interesting case. Now, folks, back then, 30-something years ago, when Jimmy Doug Shelton and Gary Carnathan tell you that divorce is going to be interesting, it's going to be interesting. Now, let me describe before we get into our clients. Now, my client, I represent the man, don't you know? And he is about a 1970s hippie. He had a big old long ponytail, come all the way down below his waist. It's plaited, had those gold things down at the end of it, whatever it is, to hold it together. He wore absolutely no shoes and no socks. I never saw him with shoes and socks. Old flip-flops. Bermuda shorts. I don't care if it's 4 degrees or 40 degrees, it's Bermuda short. And some old flannel-looking shirt always unbuttoned about right down here. I told him when we was going to court, I said, now look here, boy, you got any shoes? He said, well, he thought he had some shoes. I said, you got any socks? He said, I ain't got no socks. I said, you go buy you some socks. I said, we can't come to court in front of Judge Roberts, brand new on the bench, without no shoes and socks. And I said, you got any khaki pants? We can't wear Bermuda shorts in court. Well, he said, yeah, he thought he had some khaki pants. I said, you got a white shirt? Well, he thought he could get one. I said, okay, now we're going to be dressed. If you got a jacket, wear a jacket. So he said, well, what I need a jacket for? I said, I'm going to tuck that ponytail down behind it so the judge can't see it. Well, here we go. We get ready. Now, back in those days, young lawyers, when you got up there and they called the case on Wednesday morning and you announced you was ready to go. You had about 10 minutes for everybody to get out of the courtroom, and you called your first witness. Well, now, Jimmy Doug's client, the female, was some fine-looking woman, boys. She is good-looking. She come to court dressed, immaculately. Looked like she had just come right out of First United Methodist Church choir room. Was ready to go. He calls her as a witness, gets her on the stand. Oh, she starts telling about how terrible my client was to her. All big tears rolled down her eyes. And that he had just made her go to Jamaica, just trapped her and made her and kidnapped her and made her go. And she didn't like it, and she didn't want to go, and she'd run into the motel room, locked the door, and wouldn't come out. When Jimmy Doug got through with her, I got her on cross. I walked up there to her, and I said, now, ma'am, everything you've told, and I pointed to the judge on the bench, everything you've told, Your Honor, right there is absolutely the truth, is it not? She said, yes, sir, every bit of it's the truth. I said, you hadn't told the judge a lie, nothing else about anything? No, sir, I hadn't. Now, young lawyers, back then, we didn't have all this discovery and rules and stuff. We tried cases by ambush. Now, Jimmy Doug had ambushed me before, and I was fixing to ambush him back. So I ease over there. I said, Your Honor, can I get something out of my file? He said, yes, sir, you can. I walk over to my file. I pull out about 4 photographs. It's all about blown up about like that. Well, but we wasn't going to show but 4. See, he still remembers this case. It's 30-something years ago. Now, I pull out them photographs. I ease up there. Now, I didn't show him to Jimmy Doug. He didn't know what they were. He didn't have any idea. I'd already got her set up, and the trap was fixing to be sprung. I walked up there to her, and I said, and I flopped them down in front of her, and I said, now, ma'am, who is that woman out there dancing on that floor with this man and arms around his neck, and with this in the background? Does that say Cafe Jamaica? Well, yes, she did. That's right. I said, who is that woman? Well, that's me. I said, now, tell the court up there what you got on. She said, well, I don't have anything on. I said, what's that hanging around your neck? She said, one of them Hawaiian leis. I said, well, you got a Hawaiian lei hanging around your neck, and you ain't got no clothes on and dancing with this man with your arms around him? I said, let me show you the next photograph. And so I was continually, and Jimmy Doug, man, he come out of that seat. He was objecting of everything from Mississippi Constitution all the way down to the United States Constitution. He didn't want them to go in there. And so finally, in his infinite wisdom, Judge Roberts in his first case said, now, gentlemen, hold up just a minute. Hold up. There's a quiet just kind of fell over the courtroom. Everybody got real quiet. He leaned down. Mr. Carnathan. I said, yes, Your Honor. He leaned down. He said, let me see them photographs before I leave. He had no more got that out of his mouth than my good friend Jimmy Doug Shelton said, Your Honor, I want to see them photographs too. Well, that kind of went downhill for Jimmy Doug's client from then on out, and we finished up the day. The sweetest lady in this world was the court reporter, Miss Mary Ann Turner. She was just as sweet as she could be. And we had all these exhibits, and poor Miss Mary Ann, she didn't want to look at them, and she'd just stick the sticker on them over here and look her head the other way. We finally finished the case. Back then, you had something called ruling from the bench. You didn't have to write a 17-page opinion to say what you was going to do. You ruled from the bench. Judge Roberts called us back in chambers and said, now, boys, y'all come back to chambers. Yes, sir. We finished about 5 o'clock. We go back to chambers. He said, now I want to tell you something. Y'all did a mighty fine job out there on this case. He said, you know, I was pretty worried about this Chancery bench when I came over here. Here's Lee County, one of the most busiest places around. It's pretty nerve-wracking and everything like that. But I said, let me tell you something. After I tried this case today, this may not be such a bad job after all. Now, on a more serious note, he and I have been friends going on 50 years. There's two things, two words that stick out in my mind about Jimmy Roberts. The first one is respect. Let me tell you something. Look at this room, Jimmy. You have the respect of this entire community who has turned out on this Friday afternoon. You have the respect of the people who you appeared before you, the litigants. I have never heard one litigant that he tried now. You heard what he did. He's been a prosecuting attorney. He sent them to the jail. He sent them to the penitentiary. He divorced families, children, alimony, child support. He's written opinions in the Supreme Court. He's done it all. And I've never heard one litigant say one bad thing about him. Not one. Number two, I have never heard a lawyer who practiced before him say one bad thing either. He respected us. I don't care how stupid I was and had some bad statute. He'd call me back in chamber and say, hey, Carnathan, you know, you might ought to look up the law here. I don't think this is the right case. We would never be embarrassed. He never forgot from whence he came. He always remembered. So no lawyer have I ever heard say anything bad about Jimmy Roberts that was in his court. And fourth, well, now you know, when you look at this list of speakers, you know, there ain't but one up there that hadn't got a name but Judge by him, and that's you looking at him, that's me. He is respected by the people on the bench. His fellow people who try cases, he is well respected by. 25, 30 years ago, I was off from somewhere in South Mississippi, Greene County, in Leakesville, or George County, or somewhere like that, down in South Mississippi. And I was trying a hot divorce down there, and this young judge, they had told me as a young judge, had just got elected and was coming out. He come out on the bench, and we announced ready, just like we always did. He said, now you're Mr. Carnathan. I said, yes. He said, you're from Tupelo. And I said, yes, sir. Yes, I'm from Tupelo. First Judicial District up there. I said, yes, sir. Yes, that's where I'm from. He said, y'all got a judge up there named Jimmy Roberts, don't you not? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I'm trying to pattern how I practice my judgeship after what I've heard about what he's done. You have affected lives that you don't even know. Think about it, folks. This room is full. You could fill Vault Hemingway with people that he has affected that he doesn't know because of who he is and what he stands for. Second word, always appeared, called integrity. You can look it up in Webster's dictionary, and it can tell you what the word means. Well, once upon a time, Jimmy Roberts was running for a statewide office, a fairly high office. And I was helping him, which, of course, we didn't win. That goes to show you what he and I can do together, you know. We didn't win. But now we run a good race. I knew the other side pretty well. As a matter of fact, if he hadn't been running, I'd probably been on their side. And I ran into one of their high lieutenants at one of the political deals, and so he walked up to me, and we talked about the campaign, and it just getting started. And he said, but Carnathan, let me tell you what we fixing to do. I said, what are you fixing to do? He said, we fixing to hire a group of people to do a personal portfolio on your client. I said, now, I may be from Palmetto, and I may not know what big words mean, but now, quite frankly, if Donald J. Trump had been here, he had appreciated what I told them people to do with that personal portfolio and where to put it. So they said they were going to do it. Well, I wanted back to our group, and I said, well, now let me tell you something, folks. This campaign may get a little negative on what they told me about the situation. Well, the campaign rocked along, and it rocked along, and it rocked along, and guess what? It just, nothing happened. I saw the boys getting down close to the leg log. I saw him at another place. I said, now look here. I thought y'all was going to do this personal portfolio deal on Jimmy Roberts. He bowed his head. He said, well, we did. We paid this people a bunch of money to try to find something out negative about Jimmy Roberts. You know what they found? Nothing. They couldn't find one negative political thing about that man sitting right there. Not one. Now, folks, that's integrity. You can look at Webster's dictionary and see integrity in words. You can see it in him in life. He has it. He has enriched my life of being his friend. He has enriched your life out there sitting today. He has enriched more people's lives than he knows. And I thank you, Jimmy, for being a friend.
Well, I guess me being born in 1968 makes me the youngin' in this bunch. And also, I'm going to have to take a little bit of exception with Judge Funderburk. He mentioned earlier that saving the best for the last is the way that Phil likes to arrange his programs. Well, I understand putting Judge Wicker at the last, but me second to last, I'm still not sure I follow that one. Good afternoon, everybody, friends and family, distinguished guests. TJ, you're your own class, and Judge Roberts loves you. He loves you deeply. We are here today to commemorate the career of James L. Roberts, Jr., known fondly and far and wide as Judge Roberts. And it's a career that, simply looking at his path, illustrates that of a leader from early on, being president of his law student class, commissioner of public safety, his judicial career, one of very few folks that have actually sat on the Chancery bench, the Circuit bench, and the Supreme Court. And that was at a time when there was no Court of Appeals. Didn't even exist. And many of you were present in January of 2019 down at the Supreme Court when there was the portrait unveiling and that ceremony and that presentation at the Supreme Court. I was fortunate to have been a part of that program as well, as was another one of his clerks, Chad Russell. And Chad spoke and gave his insight, and as I sat there and listened to him tell of his experience, I too realized that Judge Roberts had an extremely positive impact on his life, and at a completely different time frame than mine. Chad came after I finished clerking at the Supreme Court for Judge Roberts. And so I told Chad as much when he sat down, and then I echoed the same in my closing remarks. But then it also dawned on me that while my remarks may seem like plagiarism to Chad's, it's because of the commonality of experience. that he had and I had, which I think more importantly illustrates the indisputable evidence about what James L. Robert Jr.'s career has been. It's not just been a career that has been touted with awards and accolades. Judge Funderburk covered all of those. But it's the indisputable evidence of what he himself as a person, as a Christian, what he has meant and how he has been so influential to so many people, and what he has done that only the rest of us can aspire to do. I'm really overwhelmed at the thought of being part of this group and being here to be a part of this, because I know that none of it would have been possible but for the influence of Judge Roberts. Aside from my parents, there's not another person on this planet that has had as much of an impact on my life as Jimmy Roberts. He's been somebody that took me under his wing. He mentored me. He guided me. He parented me. He provided the example of what to emulate. Why? Well, I know it wasn't because he saw some bright star rising in me that he thought could just use a little bit of polishing from his experience. No, I really don't know why. Probably more of the opposite. He saw somebody that just wasn't going to make it without his help. And he graciously did just that for me and many others. I think Chad will also say that he had a very similar experience. And so for that, I am extremely grateful. And to steal your thunder, Chad, I do feel like Walmart chocolate trying to describe Godiva chocolate, because Judge Roberts is without question the best of the best. I met Judge Roberts in 1994 when he had a Supreme Court clerkship available. The Court of Appeals didn't even exist yet. And Judge Roberts would be instrumental in the development of the Court of Appeals, where they would preside, what type of cases they would have, how they would resolve things between one another that would last to this very day and going forward. I interviewed with Judge Roberts in the then Carroll Garten Justice Building, which has since been destroyed and replaced. And I'll never forget, he asked me, he said, you know, if you come to work for me, can you always speak frankly? I said, yes, sir. And I was a bit perplexed at the time about it. But the reason was this. Judge Roberts was and is intellectually honest. He didn't have some sort of legal agenda he was trying to promote at the court. He wanted his advisors not to be yes people. He wanted his advisors, his clerks, to tell him straight up, to tell him objectively what was the legally accurate advice that he should follow, regardless of what that outcome may be from that legal analysis. He believed that we were there to interpret and fairly and objectively apply the law, not create it. He was, in fact, genuinely judicial, not just in title, but in his very being. One of the very important lessons that he provided me that I carry every day. And there's been reference to a dictionary. I too had a example that I wanted to give about a dictionary, which was it provides you a word in the definition. Well, if it also provided the picture, and you looked up the word judicious, I believe there would be a photograph of Jimmy Roberts. From the countless lunches and the work with Judge Roberts, he taught me not just about the law, but about people, politics, and life. Judge Roberts, he knew the importance and it emphasized to always be aware that somewhere, somehow, somebody is assessing you. So make a good impression. Make a good first impression. Make a lasting impression. He always taught me that when you go into a public place, make sure that you don't sit with the back to the door. If you sit with your back to the door, two things can happen. Somebody can come in that you need to talk to that you don't see, or two, somebody that you've made angry may come in and you not be able to see them coming. Judge Roberts, it was things of that nature. More importantly, you illustrated humbly the ability to be patient and gentlemanly, even in a situation that may be tense and contentious. See, in the 90s, there was quite a bit of contention and tense at the Supreme Court. And for those of you, y'all know what I mean when it came to the relationships of McRae, Prather, Sullivan, Pittman, and all of those that were there at the time that made for a difficult time. And arriving there, but just before I left, was Judge Mike Mills. And Judge Davidson, you can ask him that what he discovered when he got there was that despite all of the turmoil and the contention and the tenseness that was the Supreme Court at the time, there was one steady keel to that ship, and that was Jim Roberts. At the end of my term with Judge Roberts, in June of '96, myself and local Pontotoc native Jane Mapp were provided a going-away dinner, an opportunity for Judge Roberts to tell us thank you. And, you know, I really didn't understand it at the time. He took us out to eat, invited my parents, put together a 3-ring binder of all the opinions that he or I had written, and told us that he appreciated all of the hard work that we had provided for him and thanked us. Well, as I mentioned, my parents were there, and when he did that, my parents were just as speechless as I was. I mean, here we were. I was 26, green as a gourd, and I was being thanked by a Supreme Court justice. It didn't make any sense to me. And that just illustrates what type of man he is. And Judge Roberts, there's a photograph from that night that has sat on the bedside table of my parents since 1996. And I know that it was one of the proudest times that my parents have, and you made it possible. So it was not you that needed to thank me. It was me that needed to thank you. You've been at almost every milestone in my life, from my first job with you to my second job as an ADA. You were at my wedding, the birth of my children, to my first campaign and the entry into elected life. You've been at all of my milestones. You were the keynote speaker at my investiture in Batesville. And I'll never forget, we're in the Batesville courthouse, in the Batesville courtroom. And there's me and Judge Roberts and Judge Carlson and Justice Carlson, Justice Lamar. They're all there, and we're looking out at a crowd kind of like this. And Judge Roberts leans into me where nobody else can hear but me. He says, "You know, Smith," and Senator Wicker was there. He said, "You know, Smith, you've got senators, governors, representatives, a whole lot of other judges, your local officials, your family, and they're all here today. And I think you've done well, my son." I knew that Judge Roberts was speaking in that parental relationship that we shared, but then I remembered what he told me when we first met, which was to speak frankly. So I looked back at him and I told him, I said, "You know what? I actually think they're here to see you, Judge Roberts." And all I had done was hitch my wagon to him. He had provided a wagon that I will forever be grateful and indebted. And I see a lot of those people here today that were there then. So I know, Judge Roberts, I was right. They were there to see you. But I appreciate it, and I always appreciate you letting me be frank. I went back and looked at the ceremony from Jackson when you had your portrait. And I'd like to close with this, which was your own closing statement and quote from that night or that afternoon. And for those of you that were there in Jackson, or if you weren't, you can hear it now. You said, Judge Roberts, and I quote, "I'm standing on the back porch looking at the twilight of my career. And sooner or later, that's going to get here." Well, Judge Roberts, it may be that the twilight is here and that we have met here today on your back porch. But please know that we have only arrived here after you have taken your journey, your dash, one for which I am very proud to have been a part of, and with which has profoundly and positively affected everyone you've ever come in contact with. So I would echo Mr. Carnathan's comments. I love you. May God bless you. And when my twilight comes and I'm looking for my back porch, I can only hope that I have been half as helpful to half as many people as you have been in your career.
We've heard a lot of good speeches this afternoon, and they have me at the last. I guess you would call me the cleanup man. And as I sat there, I wondered what there was left for me to say. Glen incidentally mentioned this back here, "To thine own self be true." And I remember the rest of it. And it shall, it shall follow as the night the day, that thou shalt not be false to any man. I thought I would complete the thought there that Glen mentioned. As I listened to these many complimentary things, I thought of some that I had thought about, and it seems that most of them were covered. Jimmy, I've known him all of his life. And incidentally, another thing from literature that has occurred to me, in the play, Julius Caesar, Mark Antony came to the funeral, and he said, "I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." Well, I'm just the opposite today. I came here to praise Jimmy Roberts. I've known him all of his life, and it reminds me of something that was said a while ago. Somebody said that they heard nothing but complimentary things about him. And I was talking to a very country individual one time, and he was trying to get me to vote for his neighbor. And I remember the statement he made expressed the same thing in a little different term and words. He said, "I ain't never heard aught again him." So in country speech, I can say, Jimmy, I haven't heard aught again. You have an excellent reputation. Now, it was said that he was not a politician, and I'll just agree with that for the sake of the afternoon, but he has run for a lot of offices. You can call that a politician if you want to. And most people that run for office like to tell about the fact that they're from a rural area. Jimmy qualifies that. He was born in Robs, which is right down in the corner of Pontotoc County, almost in Calhoun County, and he qualifies there. There's another thing. It's nice if you're going to run for public office to have a lot of kinfolks. And Jimmy qualifies there too. Let me see now. His mother was a bishop. A lot of bishops, good folks. That helps. His father was Lamar Roberts, Sr., and that called for a lot of people in the area, and that brings in the walls and the wages and a lot of other people in the area. Now, the whole truth matter is I had a lot of things to say, but they've pretty well been said. These people have been talking all afternoon, and they've pretty well taken up all of the many things that I intended to talk about. The fact that I've known him all his life, I will tell a thing or two, though. I've known him since he was a boy, and he carried the newspaper. Ambitious to that extent, always liked to have a little money coming in. And he was in high school, at the local high school here in town, and he was a tremendous athlete. In 1960, 61, 62, he was all-conference football player. And I'm presuming that that had something to do with him going to the Methodist school down in Jackson, Millsaps, and he stayed there 1 year. And then he went to the University of Tennessee, Martin Branch, and stayed there a year. Then he went to Mississippi State and stayed there I presume he graduated. I was down there one time when they were honoring him, and they said some awfully good things about him, and I agreed with them completely. And I'm not going to go through all the various and sundry offices that he has occupied, because there's no point in repeating all that. So I'm going to shorten this presentation. And I will mention, though, the fact that he did run for 2 offices that and was not elected. One was lieutenant governor, and the other one was governor. It's said that you should not shorten your expectations, and that it teaches a person a little bit of humility to have those sort of things happen. Now, I had a remark here along about that line, but I'm having a little trouble finding my notes. Just hold it just a minute. Oh yeah, I know what it is. when you reach for something and you don't get it, the poet said that your reach should exceed your grasp. It's this nice occasion to reach for something, and you don't really reach for it, get your hands on it. It teaches you humility, and you're a better man perhaps for it. At any rate, we've said all these good things about Jimmy. I've known him all of his life, and there's something I think I ought to mention, and that is I'm taking time to talk about some things that have already been mentioned, but there is one thing I'd like to mention. I'm going to wind up with it. I am a member of the Ole Miss Law School Hall of Fame. I don't think I deserve it. Jimmy Roberts, without my knowing about it, fixed up all the papers and filed them and sent them over to the University Law School. And that's how I happened to be a member of the Hall of Fame over there. But the thing that bothers me is he is not a member of the Hall of Fame at the Law School at Ole Miss. And if anybody in the state of Mississippi is deserving of it, it is James Roberts, Jr. I was talking to his erstwhile partner, Tutor, the other day. I mentioned that. And we have got our heads together. And we intend for it to come to pass. And if any of you have any idea of assisting us in that, in typing or the wording of the application and so forth, get in touch with either me or Mr. Tutor, one or the other. Now, that's the only thing I can say after that is that he has been a wonderful citizen, a wonderful judge, a wonderful person to have in the community, and held all of the offices that he has occupied with honor, dignity, and grace. He has had and still has one of the finest experiences as a public servant of anybody that I know. Now, I'm supposed to be the cleanup man. I can't think of very much I can say that hadn't already been said, and I believe I'll just close it with that. Jimmy, you're a fine gentleman. You've made a fine citizen, a wonderful public servant, and if it weren't for your physical disability, with the fine mind you've still got, you could still do it. And it's a great loss to the community that you can't continue with your career.
Judge Roberts had asked me to recognize too, if you are a circuit clerk serving now, or if you have been a circuit clerk in our district, would you stand? Melinda's over here. Pretty good crowd. He also wanted me to recognize, and several people have already mentioned his name, Chad Russell. Stand up. Chad is from Pontotoc County, and most of you know his family, and he also served as a law clerk for Jimmy when he was at the Supreme Court. I'm going to very quickly turn it over to you, but warn you, everybody here came to see and talk to you. Give them that opportunity. Wherever you want. You want to turn around? Let him turn you around. I think this is still live. Can you hold?
Thank you so much for being here today. I wish half the things my friends had said about me were true. Many of them were possibly an exaggeration. Judge Wicker is full of stories. He has at least 1 million with another 500,000 in reserve. I'm going to borrow one of his stories. It's about the lost dog, an advertisement. The advertisement says, lost, one-eyed, three-legged dog, no tail, has been castrated, answers to the name Lucky. Somehow that seems appropriate today. In 2004, 5, and 6, I was both cursed and blessed to have a cancer on my left kidney. It worried me to death, as you might imagine. I went to have a little test, and they said, oh, you're all right, don't worry about it. And they called the house real early the next morning and said, Jimmy, you got cancer, but don't worry about it, it'll be all right. Well, that's a good way to cause you to worry a good deal. I wound up having surgery in Jackson at the University Medical Center. Fortunately, that cancer was growing on one of my kidneys, and they were able to slice it off and save my kidney. 2 days before I went to Jackson, our dear departed friend Howard Stafford, who was not known for wasting words, called me. It was most unusual, and this is just about verbatim. Phone rang, I answered it, and he said, Stafford here. I said, yes, sir. I recognize your distinguished voice. He said, I hear you're going to have surgery. Yes, sir. Bad? Yes, sir. Cancer? Yes, sir. He said, well, I hope you make it, but if you don't, you've had a hell of a lot more than you deserve. And slammed the phone down. That's a good way to look at it. I had intended to serve out this term as a circuit judge and perhaps run again. There are people my age and older who are serving. But Howard was right. I've had more than I deserve, I'm sure, and I'm grateful for that. I've taken a lick or two over the years, and that's okay, you're supposed to. The thing is to get up and keep going if you can. I would have never been elected to anything had it not been for my father and mother, my sister and brother-in-law, and later on in life, Rose. I would have never been elected to anything had it not been for my family. I know that. I'm aware of that. Excuse me. I could never buy, borrow, or steal my parents' reputation. I just couldn't. I wish today I could approach it, but I can't. They're why I was elected. And the other thing, I have always indeed dearly loved Pontotoc County. Y'all have been far better to me than I deserved, always. For the 14 or 15 times I was on the ballot for some kind of something, I always received a majority of the votes in Pontotoc County. I'm grateful for that. I can't tell you how much I love Pontotoc. If this is the end of my career, so be it. I can't complain. You know, the Bible is a rule book. If we'll just read and study it. I'm guilty of not doing that. It's full of rules. I've thought a lot this past year about Job, who had all those boils on his body and lost everything he had. And we remember the description of how he took a broken shard of pottery and scraped his body. I can't imagine that. One of the things the stroke did for me, I can't walk. It apparently took care of my left leg. I'll have a catheter for life. I don't particularly enjoy that, but I still have it. But Job did manage to survive and live through that. The book of Proverbs is a rule book. A lot of companies require the people they hire to read and study Proverbs about how to make decisions. They're also in the Bible, and I believe it's in Philippians 4:11. Brother Doug, Brother Brad, if I'm wrong, I know y'all will correct me. I believe the Apostle Paul said, I have learned to be content in whatever state I'm in. I've thought a lot about that this past year. I have not been content. I'm learning to be content. One day, I was in the middle of a 4-day jury trial in Tishomingo County, and I had a stroke early the next morning. Strokes are not pleasant. I always figured I'd topple over dead someday with a heart attack. I haven't. I'm glad I'm still here. A stroke ain't funny. Now, that said, I'm still up, and as you can see, taking nourishment. It's all right to laugh. I'm like Judge Wicker. I lost my place. And the only notes I have are written on the back of a napkin, which has been my habit forever. The nursing home is a great place to be when you need one, but make sure you need to be there when you go. These two nice ladies on the back are two of the very fine staff down there who take such good care of me. They are wonderful, and I'm deeply grateful. But on the day, and this is a true story, when I was laying on my back on my bed wearing only my birthday suit, and 6 women were standing around me watching another one instruct them on how to clean a catheter, I didn't know whether I was happy to be there or not. That is funny, but I always figured if I had been in that situation when I was 18 or 20, it would have been for a far different reason. But I'll go ahead and say on that day they could barely find it, and that was the thing they really needed. Maybe this is purgatory, I don't know. If it is, I'm going to do my best to survive that. If it is purgatory, there are a lot of good lessons in that. When I was Commissioner of Public Safety, and I'm going to make this short because I know y'all want to leave and eat cookies and drink punch, and I appreciate each and every one of you being here. I wish I could talk to each and every one of you. I went from a small-town lawyer at age 38 to becoming the executive director of one of the larger and meaner state agencies in the state, the Department of Public Safety. Down there a year or two later, there was an officer named Harold Marks. Harold was a comedian walking. Well, early one morning, for some reason, I and Harold Marks were going to some meeting in the Capitol. Just south Woodrow Wilson Avenue and the Waterworks curve, in that real brushy area then, standing on the side of the road was one of the worst looking, for lack of a better word, tramps I have ever seen. His hat, his clothing, his hair, his face were all the same color. He looked like if you touched him, he would disintegrate. His eyes were down about the bottom of his nose. He was sad. As we passed him, Harold Marks said, "Undoubtedly, there stands a former Commissioner of Public Safety." I've thought about that and laughed about it a lot through the years. Mr. Carnathan shorted y'all a good deal on the story he told, and for decorum purposes, I can't repeat it in here. But it was worse than he told and was funny, and even though it's been a lot of years, I still laugh about it. Jimmy Doug Shelton, I asked Mr. Shelton if he had seen those pictures, and he did say no, but I'd sure like to. We spent a lot of the day looking at pictures. Mr. Carnathan won, by the way. In my first week as Chancery Judge, we have the business of committing people for various and sundry reasons. There was a man here whom I like a lot. When he's normal and on his medicine and that sort of thing, he would cross the street, speak to me, and I like him a lot. He can't help it. Well, he got off his medication or something, and his family took him to the doctor, and they signed the papers they needed to commit him. Well, for several reasons, the Chancery clerk, his lawyer, the sheriff, and me decided we need to hold his hearing in the jail. If you get my drift, if he were able and could produce it, he might throw stuff at you. You can imagine what that stuff would be. Anyway, over in the jail cell, he looked at his lawyer and said, "Lawyer, what are you going to do for me?" And the lawyer said, "Well, to tell you the truth, there's not anything I can do for you. Your family wants you to go. The doctors have said you need to go." He looked at him and said, "Well, you're certainly not much of a lawyer." And then I didn't grin, or I didn't mean to. If I did, he turned and looked at me squarely and said, "And you're certainly not much of a damn judge." I said, "I hope you enjoy your trip to Whitfield." And that ended that story. There's so many people here I wish I could personally thank. Most of them are gone now. I learned more than I could tell you from all these people behind me, by and large, including Smith Murphey. All of them were good to me. I'll never live long enough to thank Judge Davidson for all I learned from him. He's one of the smartest people this county has ever produced. He is. He is something. He's not pretentious. He's a nice fellow, and I'm glad to count him as a friend, as I am all these others here. I learned a lot from Judge Malski. I learned a lot from Gary Carnathan. Sometimes it was on the other side, you understand. You can learn from a negative experience the same as you can. At Jim Hubbard and Howard Stafford's funeral, both of them, I said they loved to hate each other and they hated to love each other. And that was true. I can't tell you everything I learned from them. It wouldn't do in mixed company. At any rate, I've been fortunate. I've had a great life, a wonderful career. None of this was planned on my part. I didn't ever get to do what I had wanted to do, and that's fine. I've had a wonderful time, and I'm grateful. I'll never live long enough to thank each of you for all you have meant to me and done for me in terms of support for me. I learned a long time ago to try not to be ugly to anybody whom I knew didn't vote for me. I always took the attitude that everybody voted for me. A noted politician, Steve Holland, is in this crowd. And if you can say the things he said in public and survive as long as he can, he's a walking miracle. Steve, you did a good job. Thank you. I want to see you as often as I can, but on an eye level, not looking up at you. My ambition, if I have one, and I appreciate what my dear friend Judge Funderburk said, we've had a good working relationship. The circuit court is and can be an ugly court, but I believe every person on this earth is a child of God, even when we misbehave, and I believe that every person who appeared before me ought to have a shot at doing better if they possibly could. And I thought if they wanted that, they deserved that, and I thought if they didn't want that, they ought to get what they really deserved, and that's the way I tried to operate. I always modeled a lot of what I did after Judge Wicker. I thought he was good with people. I don't particularly want to work again. Life seems to be pretty good down in the nursing home. They wake you up early and shoot you full of holes and then carry you in, feed you. You can watch TV and they'll come in, wake you up and shoot you again, give you some awful tasting medicine. And about 3 times a week, they'll take you down there and steal all your clothes and take a wire brush and lye soap and really give you a good bath. So if you need one, just go to some nursing home. These ladies up behind me against the wall, if they hadn't already left, are as fine as you can find. They are dear, sweet people. They have really been good to Rose and me, and I appreciate them very much, as I do each of you. I'm amazed that this number of people showed up. I did not want to retire. That was not in my plans ever. My daddy always said when somebody asked him, when are you going to retire? He said, I don't ever plan to retire. And he didn't as such. But a stroke got him. So I guess that maybe runs in my family. I'm grateful to my family, Joanne and Jerry and Keith and those folks who are here. I'm grateful to Rose and her family. Kim, would you stand up? Kim Bounds has been my court reporter. We're blessed in this district to have good personnel, fine court reporters. She's one of the best, and I deeply appreciate her service. Chad? Chad, somehow or another, I intended for you to say a few words today. I was deeply impressed with what you and Smith both said about me at my portrait hanging in Jackson on January the, whatever date it was, 18th or 19th. I said, as Smith said, that I was standing on the back porch in the twilight of my career. I didn't realize how close to twilight it was. Now, my sister Joanne, who told somebody she was really glad to finally be in charge, and those of you who know her will know that that's true. She had or stayed with me a night or two early on. I was supposed to have died, as I understand it, and Joanne drew the unpleasant duty of staying with me a night or 2 or 3, and I talked so much there's no telling what I said. She ain't over it yet, though, is all I can say. I somehow remember that I thought somebody was trying to kill me and they were going to do it on a small plane over a body of water. I simply couldn't get that out of my mind, and I don't know if that's what I told her or something else. At any rate, I'm grateful to her and Jerry. They have suffered through an awful lot. I'm grateful to all my kinfolks. I probably have, I don't know how many cousins I have, but I want y'all to know I love you dearly, and I claim every one of you. Now, Kelly, I used to just claim Glen to everybody in the 3rd District. And I did that so long, I've had some of your younger kinfolks come up to me and say, now, Judge, how are we kin? And I would always tell them we're some kind of cousin, I think. It's worked exceedingly well. You're a good public servant. You don't need it, but if you ever do, just claim kin to everybody. It works. I've said too much. Y'all have said more than I could ever imagine by being here today. I'm deeply grateful. I always will be. Rose is grateful too. She just doesn't know it, but she will. And Kim and Sarah Catherine are. We appreciate that very much. We appreciate you being here. I appreciate Angela and the staff. I appreciate Judge Funderburk, the other judges in the district. I appreciate the Chamber of Commerce. Every one of you, I owe a deep debt of gratitude. Maybe I can get it paid sometime. I hope so. If this is purgatory, it ain't near as bad as some folks have said. Thank y'all so much. I'm sorry to do this, and just take a minute. Sarah Catherine has a black robe. When I learned I was going to become a chancellor in late 1987, I called the Baptist bookstore in Jackson, Mississippi, and said, do y'all have any of those black choir robes there? And they said, indeed we do. And I said, I guess you sell some of them to judges, don't you? And they said, indeed we do. I bought that robe. It's a Baptist choir robe. I bought it at the Baptist bookstore in Jackson. I've worn it in every court I have ever served in. I still have it. I don't want to be buried in it, but I have it. Some years ago, Rose bought me a brand new judicial robe. It is awfully nice, and I like it, but it's almost in a virgin state. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Judge Roberts. Again, thank everyone so much for coming out today. I hope you will be able to stay around a few minutes and be able to enjoy the food that these folks have put together for us and get to visit with Judge Roberts. Please, he says he will stay as long as you want to stay and visit with him, and I want you all to have that opportunity.
Let's pray. Our Father, we're thankful for this day. It's been a good day. It's the day which the Lord hath made, and we'll be glad and rejoice in it. Thank you for all the good things said about my friend, Judge Roberts. And I pray, Lord, that he'll remember these things and that were not spoken flippantly, but they were truth. And Lord, I pray that you'd bless him throughout the rest of his life. Draw us all up close to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you.